Imagine a 29-year-old with messy hair and rumpled t-shirts building the second largest cryptocurrency exchange on the planet, testifying in front of the United States Congress, sitting next to celebrities like Tom Brady and Larry David in Super Bowl commercials, and being personally compared to a young Warren Buffett. Now imagine that same young billionaire, in the span of just 10 days, watching his entire empire collapse into nothing, discovering that $8 billion of customer money had simply vanished. This is the story of Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, one of the fastest and most devastating financial collapses in modern history. To understand how FTX rose so quickly, we have to go back to 2017, when Sam Bankman-Fried, a young physicist and former Wall Street trader, founded a cryptocurrency trading firm called Alameda Research. The firm specialized in exploiting tiny price differences of Bitcoin between different countries, a strategy known as arbitrage. It was profitable, methodical, and largely unremarkable, at least by crypto industry standards. But Bankman-Fried had bigger ambitions. In 2019, he founded FTX, a cryptocurrency exchange designed to let everyday traders and large institutions buy, sell, and speculate on digital assets. Unlike many of its chaotic competitors, FTX built a reputation for having relatively sophisticated technology and user-friendly features that appealed to serious traders. The timing was perfect. Cryptocurrency prices were exploding throughout 2020 and 2021, and millions of new investors, including complete beginners, were rushing to get in on the action. FTX rode that wave aggressively, growing at an almost unbelievable pace. Bankman-Fried cultivated a very specific public image. He wore the same rumpled t-shirts and cargo shorts to nearly every meeting, drove a modest car, and slept on a beanbag chair at his office, presenting himself as a humble, hyper-rational genius who cared more about solving global problems than personal wealth. He publicly embraced a philosophy called effective altruism, pledging to eventually give away almost his entire fortune to charitable causes. This carefully cultivated persona proved enormously effective. Investors, regulators, journalists, and everyday crypto users found him remarkably trustworthy, especially compared to the flashier, more obviously reckless characters that populated much of the cryptocurrency industry. By 2021, FTX's valuation had reached over $32 billion. Bankman-Fried personally testified before Congress, positioning himself as a responsible voice within an industry often criticized for chaos and fraud. He poured enormous amounts of money into political donations, celebrity endorsement deals, and even a stadium naming rights agreement with the Miami Heat basketball team. To the outside world, FTX looked like the most stable, most trustworthy exchange in the entire crypto industry. But behind the scenes, something deeply troubling was happening. FTX and Alameda Research, the original trading firm Bankman-Fried had founded years earlier, were supposed to operate as completely separate entities. In reality, the boundary between the two companies had become dangerously blurred. Alameda Research was secretly using customer funds deposited on the FTX exchange to make its own risky trading bets, essentially treating customer money as its own private investment capital. This arrangement violated one of the most fundamental principles of any legitimate financial exchange. Customer deposits are supposed to remain completely separate from the company's own trading activities, always available for withdrawal whenever a customer requests it. For years, this dangerous arrangement remained hidden from public view. FTX continued growing, continued attracting new customers, and continued projecting an image of overwhelming stability and success. Then, in early November of 2022, everything began unraveling with shocking speed. On November 2nd, the cryptocurrency news outlet CoinDesk published a leaked internal balance sheet from Alameda Research. The document revealed something alarming. A massive portion of Alameda's assets weren't actual cash or established cryptocurrencies at all. Instead, they consisted primarily of FTT, a token created and controlled entirely by FTX itself, essentially a form of paper wealth with questionable real-world value. This revelation immediately raised serious concerns throughout the cryptocurrency community about exactly how financially stable Alameda Research, and by extension FTX, truly were. Just days later, Changpeng Zhao, the CEO of Binance, FTX's largest competitor and, notably, an early investor in FTX itself, publicly announced on social media that Binance would be selling off its entire holding of FTT tokens, citing concerns raised by the CoinDesk report. That single tweet triggered immediate panic across the entire cryptocurrency market. Customers, suddenly worried about FTX's financial stability, began rushing to withdraw their fund from the exchange as quickly as possible. Within just 24 hours, FTX faced withdrawal requests totaling billions of dollars. There was just one catastrophic problem: FTX didn't actually have the money. Because Alameda Research had been secretly using customer deposits for risky trading and investments, FTX simply couldn't fulfill the flood of withdrawal requests suddenly pouring in. The exchange, which had spent years projecting an image of rock-solid stability, was discovered to be sitting on a massive, gaping hole in its finances. On November 8th, just 6 days after the initial CoinDesk report, Bankman-Fried announced that Binance had agreed to acquire FTX in an emergency bailout deal, hoping to prevent a complete collapse. Just 1 day later, Binance walked away from the deal entirely, citing deeply troubling findings during their brief internal review of FTX's actual financial records. Without a rescue deal, FTX had absolutely no way to cover the massive shortfall. On November 11th, 2022, just 9 days after the initial CoinDesk report first surfaced, FTX officially filed for bankruptcy. Sam Bankman-Fried immediately resigned as CEO. The new CEO brought in to oversee the bankruptcy proceedings an experienced corporate restructuring expert named John Ray, who had previously overseen the infamous Enron bankruptcy decades earlier, made a stunning public statement. He declared that in nearly 40 years of handling corporate failures, including Enron itself, he had never witnessed such a complete absence of basic corporate financial controls as he found inside FTX. As investigators dug deeper into FTX's actual books, the true scale of the disaster became horrifyingly clear. Approximately $8 billion in customer funds were completely unaccounted for, seemingly vanished into a combination of risky trades, lavish spending, and reckless mismanagement between FTX and Alameda Research. Over 1 million customers worldwide, many of them ordinary individual investors who had trusted FTX with their life savings, suddenly found their accounts completely frozen, their money potentially gone forever. The human toll was devastating. Stories emerged of people who had lost retirement savings, emergency funds, and money set aside for their children's education, all trapped inside an exchange that could no longer access their own supposedly secure deposits. Federal prosecutors moved with remarkable speed. In December of 2022, just weeks after the bankruptcy filing, Sam Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas, where FTX had been headquartered and extradited back to the United States to face multiple federal charges, including wire fraud, securities fraud, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. Several of Bankman-Fried's closest colleagues and former romantic partner, who had also served as CEO of Alameda Research, cooperated with prosecutors, providing damaging testimony about the inner workings of the fraud. In October of 2023, Sam Bankman-Fried's criminal trial began in New York, capturing international media attention. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence that Bankman-Fried had knowingly and deliberately misused customer funds for years, all while publicly presenting FTX as a safe, trustworthy exchange. On November 2nd, 2023, exactly 1 year after the CoinDesk report that had triggered the entire collapse, a jury found Sam Bankman-Fried guilty on all 7 criminal counts he faced. In March of 2024, he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. The FTX collapse sent shockwaves throughout the entire cryptocurrency industry, triggering a broader crisis of confidence that led to the failure of several other major crypto companies that have been financially intertwined with FTX and Alameda Research. The FTX scandal remains one of the most stunning financial collapses in modern history, not just because of the staggering amount of money involved, but because of how quickly it all happened. A company once valued at $32 billion, once considered one of the most trustworthy names in an often chaotic industry, completely disintegrated in less than 2 weeks. It stands as a powerful reminder that charisma, celebrity endorsements, and carefully cultivated public images mean absolutely nothing if the fundamental financial structure underneath is built on borrowed customer money and reckless deception. So here's a question for you. Do you think stronger cryptocurrency regulation could have prevented the FTX collapse entirely, or was fraud on this scale always going to eventually be exposed, regardless of how the industry was regulated? Let me know in the comments below.